Hi friends, today I'm showing you how to paint autumn leaves using negative painting, where we paint around the leaves to make them pop. This tutorial is only 12 minutes long, but your actual painting time will be longer, probably 60 minutes or more with drying. I've condensed it so you can see the technique without the waiting. Pause any time to catch up. If you prefer real-time painting with me, there's a 50-minute version in the description. Grab your watercolors, let's create something cozy. For our first layer, we simply pre-wet our paper, let it sink in for a second, and then we're going to mix up lots of yellows, oranges, and reds, and we're going to drop those randomly into the wet paper. I also ended up mixing up a green too, but be careful when you drop red and green. Don't drop them next to each other because they will create a muddy brown if they're too mixed together. Also, when you're mixing your color to drop in, vary the amount of water and make some colors deeper and darker than the others. This will give it a little bit of depth as it dries. Right now it just looks like I've got all these different strokes, but as it sinks into the water, it will actually merge and look smoother once it's dry. While it was still wet, I mixed up a watery red and splattered some onto the background for added interest. So before moving on, we have to let that dry, or you could dry it with a hairdryer. I got some leaves from my yard and started to transfer different shapes to my paper in random spots and not overlapping. You could actually grab your leaves and trace them, or you could download pictures from the internet, whatever's easier to get started. I'm only going to draw a few because these are going to be our very top leaves, so I want to make sure there's lots of room for leaves underneath. Now here's where the magic happens. We're going to take some paint. I'm mixing up a red and some yellow and a little bit of green. This is where you start to paint, but you're not painting the leaves. You're actually painting all of the space around the leaves, the space that is not a leaf. I like to have a few colors ready to go so I can randomly alternate my colors. Like you'll see, I started with red and I added a little yellow. I put some green, but don't mix the green in with red, so I put some yellow beside it. And be aware of what's underneath too. So like, I probably wouldn't put the green over top of a red area. I would save the green for a yellow or a green area. But you can see as it progresses, you start to see the leaves. So we have to let that dry completely, or again, we can dry it with a hairdryer before we start to add more leaves. And this is where you can kind of just lay your leaves around and see what fits where or how you like it. But make sure when you draw, you do not draw over top of any leaf that you've already defined. This leaf is underneath. I will try to connect the other leaves that are already defined, but I'll make sure that the leaves on this layer only underlap the top leaves and do not overlap each other because we want them to be defined as individual leaves. After I get my leaves drawn, it's time to add more layers. I mix up some pink and some pink with a little blue in it, and I even add some burnt sienna. So I'm going to simply start going around my new leaf shapes as well as my existing leaf shapes. And I'm varying my color and my darkness to keep it interesting. I'm speeding this up a little so you don't have to watch every single brush stroke, but don't forget, I have a full extended real-time tutorial for this exact video that shows absolutely everything, and that link will be in the description. So this time I mix up some purple and add some splatters to kind of give it a little more contrast at this layer. Don't forget, these leaves have been on the ground. There's going to be rotted spots and dark spots. So we have to let this dry. And if you haven't already guessed, our next layer will be drawing some more leaves. And again, we're going to draw them down as a third layer. So the first and second layer leaves will overlap the leaves that we're drawing. So you'll only see parts of them. And before I start painting, I just took a tiny little scrubber brush and I just put a little bit of water on it, made it barely damp. And I'm just going to lightly redefine the stems on those two sets of leaves and maybe a couple maple leaves. That way when we paint our next layer, we'll paint around those. This time we're mixing up a dark blue, and we're going to make sure that it's still transparent. See how that shows the red underneath? So as we layer, we'll still see the mottled and the different colored textures as we paint over them. I'm also mixing up a cooler red, and I'm going to start to paint in the small areas. Now keep in mind, as you draw more leaves, the areas are going to get smaller and smaller. So if you're using a large brush, switch to a smaller one. It'll be much easier painting in the little areas. As you add more layers, your background area is going to become darker, which makes it actually harder to see the leaves you've drawn in. So take your time and go slow. And if you do paint over one, it's not a big deal. Nobody will know but you. As I'm painting the dark in, I'm actually taking some of the pink and I'm dropping it in just a little here and there so the color isn't completely flat. It still has some interest. I mix up more color as I need it. I'm not going to get it exact, and that's okay, but I try to keep it fairly close. When I reach the spot where I just lightly made an indication of the stem, I paint around the outside, so once it's done, it looks like the stem was always there. So be aware that where I'm pointing is very orangey, and we have a mix that has a lot of blue in it. And if we put that over top of the orange, it's going to dry down and create a muddy, dull brown look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some pink and I'm going to mix it back in with it. And next time I'm going to make sure that I add the more purpley to anything with a ton of orange. It's going to just make it a little more interesting and not such a dull color. So after you finish painting all of the small negative pieces, you have to dry it. And then I know you know what we're going to do. We're going to draw some more leaves. So again, we're going to make sure that we do not go over top of any of the existing leaves that we've already defined. So the only part of that bottom leaf that will show are the little bits that peek out from underneath all of the existing leaves. This time I mixed just a purple that is a little thicker than what I was mixing before. I'll speed up all of these little painting areas because I'm sure you get the idea by now, but what I want to get to are the finishing touches that really, really make this stand out. Notice how small the spaces are getting as I add more leaves and more leaves. Each layer, the spaces get smaller and smaller. So we're going to finish this up quickly and we will let that dry, and then I'll move on to show you some really exciting stuff. So as you can see, I had a little visitor, my cat Charlie, and no, he's not the exciting stuff. All right, so you can see on this leaf, I'm actually painting negatively. What I'm doing is I'm painting the space in between the little ribs on the leaves. If you're finding it hard to paint around imaginary lines, you can always draw in a few of the vein lines and use that as a guide and paint around them. I'm not going to make every leaf the same. I want some variety, so some I'll do veins, some I won't, some I'll drop colors into. Here I'm dropping some red into the sections in between the veins, and I'm also grabbing some yellow. I'm varying the colors, and I'm not making everything perfect. One side I don't even follow veins. One side I do. It's just an impression of what is there. I don't want high detail. On this maple leaf, I actually drew the veins on with my brush and I absolutely hated them. I just found they were too stark. So I took some water and I dropped water all over it and kind of mushed them up a little and made them a little more organic. The edge of this leaf, I actually dropped in some burnt sienna and even a little blue to kind of make it look like it was starting to rot. And on the red ones, some I just kind of painted and left the center line, and others I actually wet and dropped color in. I just painted color on these ones and then added some water to them just to make them look loose and interesting. When the maple leaves dried, they were a lot lighter than I wanted, so I simply added another layer of color to deepen them. So after we're all done painting all of the leaves, and I don't put detail on all of them, only a few, it is time to let that dry, and then we'll move on to the very last step. Now this is what's going to really make it pop. I'm actually adding small amounts of shadow underneath the leaves where they overlap the underneath ones. And I'm simply just painting a small line. My paint is fairly watery, it's not thick, and then I'm rinsing my brush and I'm blotting it on a Kleenex, and I'm simply tickling the edge of that paint and pulling it out so it's not a straight line. Like, you can really see the painting start to come to life now as I do this. And this is such a relaxing technique. I just love doing it. It does not matter what it turns out like. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece. It's fun, it's relaxing, and that's what I want you to do. I want you to have fun with this. And don't forget, I have a full tutorial on this. In fact, it's an hour long where I slow everything down and I show every single step. And I will put that link in the description if you'd like to paint along with me. I suggest you follow that one. And after your painting has dried and you evaluate it, if things are too light, you can go back and you can add another layer on top of them, which will make it darker. And my favorite part, removing the tape. It did bleed a little, but overall it looks pretty good. And there it is, my cozy autumn painting that I had an absolute joy creating. Thanks for staying till the end. I'll see you in the next one.